Everyone, we're going to look at quadratics in this video. We're going to look at the three different formats you can write a quadratic in, and we're going to look at the graphs that they make. And the graph of a quadratic is called a parabola. If you look at these formulas we've got here, these equations we've got here, x and y are called the variables. X is independent variable, y is dependent variable, and the other letters a, b, c, p, q, h, and k are all called parameters. What we're going to do in this video is going to see how the parameters affect the shape of the parabola and how to convert between the different formats. That's a lot of information in a short amount of time, and I've got other separate videos on these two different things. I'm trying to combine it all together here to give you a good summary. And I'm going to do that with two examples. Here's the first example. These three different equations here, if you put them in a graphing program, you would get this. Okay, all three equations give you the same graph. X versus y, and you get the same graph. Okay, so obviously you can convert between these three, which I'll show you later, but more importantly, the numbers here tell you about how to graph it and where to graph it on your coordinate plane. Let's have a look at each of those numbers, parameters. So this 3 is the most important one to start with, because that tells you, because 3 is bigger than 0, the parabola is going to be this shape. It's going to be a smiley face, or it opens up, meaning as you go up the graph it gets wider apart, also called concave up. If you go into the cave, you're going on the upside. Okay, concave up, opens up, smiley face, if this first number is a positive number. We'll get back to this B in a minute, but the C here tells you the Y-intercept. Okay, if you reformat your equation in this format, then the plus 4 here tells you that negative 4 is one of your x-intercepts, and the minus 2 tells you that 2 is your intercept. That's because on this line, on the x-axis, y equals 0. So how do you get 0? Well, either this bracket is 0 or that bracket is 0. So if x plus 4 is 0, then x has got to be minus 4. If x minus 2 is 0, then x has to be 2. Okay, this third format will tell you about this vertex here, or the turning point. So, because it says plus 1 here, the x value is going to be negative 1, the x coordinate. And it's got a minus 27 here, so the y coordinate is going to be minus 27. Okay. There's also another way to work this out. If you do here, minus b on 2a. So b is 6, a is 3. So if you go minus 6 on 2 times 3, you'll get negative 1, which will give you this number. You put negative 1 into any of these three, and that will give you the y value. Okay, there's one example. I'll show you another example in a minute, but now I'm going to show you how to convert between these two. We're going to start with this format. If you start with either of these two formats, just expand it out. Expand out the brackets, multiply these things together, and you'll get back to this format. That's easy. To get from this format to these two is a little bit harder. Okay? To get from this format to the PQ format, we've got to factor. So first thing is take out a common factor. Common factor here is 3. So we take that out. And then now what's inside this bracket here? We can split it into two different brackets. It's called factoring. So you look for factors of AC, which is 1 times negative 8, that add up to B, which is 2. So negative 8 is 4 times negative 2. So you put a plus 4 and a minus 2 in your brackets there. You factored it. Okay? Look at my other video on factoring if you need to practice that. Okay, to get from this format to the vertex format is a little bit harder. We do that using a technique called completing the square. There's a few different ways to do that. the way I find my students find simplest is to equate this to 0, make y equal 0, and then take the c value on the other side, left hand side, then divide out the a. Then now this next step is called completing the square. How do I make this side a perfect square? Well, what you do is add 1, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So you got to do the same thing to both sides, add 1. Now why did we add 1? Because if you factor this, you will get x plus 1 squared. So you're making this expression here, or equation here, or let's deal with the left hand side, this expression here into a perfect square. So in this step in the middle, you've got to add the missing number to make it a perfect square. Okay? And then you took out the a back up here, so you've got to put it back in. And then final step is just to write out your answer. Okay, and then I'll give you that. Okay, so I've got another video on this completing the square linked below if you need to practice that. Let's see another example. I'll do this a little quicker. Okay, so let's see what each of the parameters do. Again, these three different equations, if you graph them, you'll get something that looks like this. Let's go. This a value is -2. So what does that tell you? That it's negative, so there's a frowny face. Negative makes you frown. Okay, which means it opens down, or it's concave down. Go into the cave on the downside. Okay. This 6 tells you about the y-intercept. In our factored form here, this +3 here means you've got -3 is one x-intercept. This -1 here tells you 1 is the other x-intercept. And now in this format, you got +1 here, so it gives you -1, and 8 here gives you 8, so the coordinates there are -1, 8. You can also do -b on 2a, so -4 times divided by 2 times -2 is -1. Okay, so -1, 8. So I think that little color-coded thing there hopefully will help you remember the influence each of the parameters has. Okay, now how do I convert to the different formats? Well, same factoring. We take out the common factor first, -2, and then look for factors of AC that add to B. In this case, it's +3 and -1. Gives you -3 and +1 in your answer. Okay, now completing the square to change it to vertex form, make it equal to 0, put the c on the left hand side, divide by a, complete the square, factor it, and then put your a back in, and then rewrite your answer. Okay, so pause the video, look at that carefully, and practice with some other examples if you need to. Right, in our little summary, you got 3 different formats: general form, factored form, and completed square form or vertex form. A tells you about concavity, C tells you what the y-intercept is, P and Q tells you what the x-intercepts or the roots are, HK tells you what the vertex are, and H is also -b on 2a. Okay, any quadratic can have the general form or the vertex form. Not all of them have the factored form, or not a neat, nice factored form anyway. You can't factor every quadratic, but you can always complete the square, because not every parabola has x-intercepts, so factored x-intercepts, P and Q x-intercepts, but they all have vertices, HK. Alright, hope that was helpful. I know that was fast, but I'm sure you can do it with practice, and check out some other videos or practice yourself. That's the best way to do it. Alright, good luck.